Hello everybody, this is Tim here again for another movie review, this time for the movie Dead and Buried, which came out in 1981, I believe. Now, the interesting thing about this movie is it was written by Dan O'Bannon. Now, if you don't know who Dan O'Bannon is, he pretty much wrote and directed Return of the Living Dead, the classic zombie film about zombies that run um, and talk and all that kind of crazy shit. And he also wrote the movie Alien. Now he kind of wrote the script for this, but at the same time he says that they didn't use hardly any of his ideas from his version of the script that he made. So he pretty much wanted to disown this movie and didn't want his name on it or anything. So it's very interesting when you think about it, when you actually watch this film. So just to get into Dead and Buried, when this film starts out, you got this photographer guy who's all at once he zooms up on this real hot blonde. He's and the actor who plays the photographer dude I recognize this actor right off the bat. It's the guy from Jack Frost. If you've ever watched the movie Jack Frost, this is literally the same dude from that movie who played the sheriff. He's there as the photographer, and he starts taking pictures of this hot blonde, talking to her, and all at once she unbuttons her shirt. You see her boobs and everything, which looks pretty nice. And she's hitting on him, hey, you want to do it? And he's like, okay. He walks over and he's getting ready to bang her, and then all at once all these townspeople show up, and you're what's going on? Because if you're watching the movie for the first time, like I did, I kind of thought hey, maybe maybe he's the killer, because it's a man and she's a woman. Maybe he's a crazy serial killer who's going to take pictures of her and keep him as a souvenir after he murders her. But no, it's a twist, and she's setting him up, and then these townspeople show up, and then really brutal, hit the dude in the face with a shovel. Well, she doesn't fight back very much, though, to be honest. But which this is the 80s, they probably don't really have the choreography going on at the time and all that, especially for a B movie like this to kind of pull off an amazing action sequence or whatever. But he's pretty much just the victim. So they hit him in the face with a shovel. They got him tied with a net to a post, and they set the dude on fire. It's really brutal while they're taking pictures of it and filming it. It never really explains why they're filming it or whatever. I guess twist at the end of the movie, the guy who's organizing all this just wanted it for his collection or whatever. He's just kind of insane. So you got the guy in the movie who plays the sheriff, and I recognize this actor. I've seen him in some other stuff. He's good here. I like him, but every now and then when he gets really emotional, he's meant to go really hardcore emotional, over the top. It does start. He kind of overacts a little bit. It does start to be a little much. It's like almost like he's on a stage or something. Like one of them. What do you call them? Stage actors, I guess, for a drama they're doing on stage, like Romeo and Juliet or something. But yeah, besides that, he's good. I like him. You got Robert Englund here as one of the local townspeople. It's pretty neat seeing him in a supporting role like this. This was before, I believe, yeah, it was before Nightmare on Elm Street, which was 84. If this was 81, then yeah, it was before. He does a good job here. It's just a really small role, but he's good. And so the guy's pretty much trying to figure out what the hell's going on. You get some more kind of random victims every now and then, and the movie is a mystery movie, so it's well, you're just kind of in the midst of it where it's a mystery, and you're waiting to the end of it to be well, is all this going to pay off, or is it going to be a shitty payoff? So the movie has a real dark atmosphere of just dread. The dude who's burnt, he survives, he's in the hospital, and the blonde chick shows up there disguised as a nurse and stabs the dude right in the eye. Pretty hardcore violent scene. This movie has some hardcore violence in it. It's not played for laughs or for fun like other slasher movies and things like that. This isn't a slasher movie. This is really just a straight up horror B movie. What gives it the B movie feel, despite the seriousness of it, is because it is an older film. So with the overall look of the film and some of the acting and things like that, and just the feel of the movie because it was made in the early 80s, it gives it a B movie feel. I'm not sure if it would have had that when it first came out, but watching it. Well, I guess it kind of still would have had it because the idea of the movie is still kind of a B-movie idea once you get into it. But at the same time, it's not like a B-movie in a bad way. It's just a B-movie kind of movie, idea or whatever. But it's not a silly, stupid B-movie like Leprechaun, which is just meant to laugh at it, which is fine. I like those films, but this isn't what this is going for. This is a much more serious B-movie idea. A much more serious idea for a B-movie. But just because it's a B movie doesn't mean you have to laugh at it. And I'm just reaffirming that because I think when some people hear B movies, they're oh, it's stupid. It's no, it's not stupid. But yeah, so he's trying to solve what's happening. So you're will it pay off in the end? And you got the people running around town or whatever. And then you start to notice during other murders that there's even more and more townspeople. You start to see that it's see the people who did the murder at the beginning doing regular day jobs in the town. So you're oh, is it a cult? Is it some kind of conspiracy? What the hell's going on here? And then it gets to another scene where this family like shows up with their kid, and they're attacked at this house or whatever. It's kind of coincidental that their vehicle or whatever, they just have to like track them down at the same time, like when their vehicle's waiting and they're like right there. And I think they may have set it up. I'm not for sure. I can't remember exactly, but they got them there and they're attacking them. But they actually managed to get away, which is interesting because since they did get away, you would think that they would call like the out of town police or something or whatever. But it never kind of happens. And when I was looking up information about this movie after I saw it, come to find out that was actually like a much later scene, and they re-edited it to take place earlier in the movie. So the fact that it takes place later in the movie, it kind of makes more sense because you're like, well, maybe they haven't had time to get a hold of the authorities or whatever, they're just happy to get the hell out of there. But they managed to get away. And then the cop is like driving through town or wherever the sheriff is, and he accidentally like runs one of the people over, and his arm's like stuck to the vehicle, and it's like still moving. So you're like, okay, these people are maybe they're undead in some way, shape, or form. You know, you start to get that idea. And then when you get to the end, the guy's wife is like missing and all that, and the movie tries to derail you and make you think it's going to be about like witchcraft or something because the way his wife's dressing and all that. But then when you get to the end, the big twist is, of course, is the entire town is populated by dead people. There's nobody alive in Hometown. Everybody's dead. The cop's like freaking out, like what the hell's going on. His wife shows up. There's like a guy who works at the morgue. You find out he's basically an insane doctor, and he's been murdering people this entire time. I guess for years. Like this movie, when you think about it too much, it does kind of fall apart, and that's what kind of keeps it in the B movie range. Like this guy's been like killing people or finding dead people for years. Has he been like? I mean, it begs the question, did he show up at this town when people were, like, still alive, and then he just, like, started murdering them or finding dead ones and bringing them back to life, and then he got them to, like, kill more people and so on and so on? Like, eventually wouldn't, I mean, that's quite a lucky thing, like, because these people have relatives and everything from, like, out of town who would eventually come to meet them or come to see them. If you keep killing, like, so many people like that, the FBI or somebody would eventually find out and show up. It really, it doesn't exactly gel too well if you overthink it. And the idea that they were kind of able to like overtake the entire town without any of like the people like getting away and managing to alert other people or surviving and getting away in a car or something, going and alerting the authorities out of town, it does kind of hurt if you overthink it. But once you get to ending twist, you find out like the dude's wife is also one of them, and she's there, and he's like, oh, and the guy apparently says he like gave her he gave her a little bit of her own free will back and all that and other stuff. And he basically states that he can take away the free will of the people when he brings them back to life, and he keeps them as like slaves, kind of. And so it's like, so it begs the question of like exactly how human are these things? Like how much do they remember from their previous lives? Because the dude has to like kill his wife, and he shoots her like multiple times, and then she like finally dies, and then she's like, bury me, like she knows she's dead. So he buries her, and then all the rest of the town shows up there to put flowers on her grave. So it's like, okay, they kind of know what's going on, that they do kind of know that they're all dead. That's the thing. So they're putting like flowers on her grave. So it's like begs the question of like how much exactly do these creatures know? Like how much do they know? Because you would think if they know they're dead and all that, and that the doctor obviously is the one that's responsible for it, that they would just go kill him, you know, to get revenge, or at least some of them would, that they would just go kill him. It'd be like one of those situations where it's like, you know, the Frankenstein monster thing, where they just go and kill their creator. And then the funny thing about the movie that keeps it in B-movie territory is the guy who is the doctor who did all this. The cop's like, how did you do it? He's like, I'll never tell. I'll take my secrets to my grave. And of course, what they're doing is they're like, well, we don't really want to explain how he did it because it would probably sound stupid, you know, so we'll just sidestep it. So it's like, okay, you could have gave me at least something. But, so he dies. The cop kills him, and then the dude, like, brings himself back. We don't know how, of course, he does it. And so he brings himself back. Now he's one of the creatures as well. And the big extra twist at the end of the movie is the dude is like, you find out the cop is dead too, basically. That he was dead the entire time too. But that, once again, that messes up if you overthink it, or you think too much into it, because why does he have complete free will when none of the other ones do? Because he's the only one not in on the mass killing like the other creatures are. So it doesn't really make sense if you think about it. Because why would he give this guy complete free will? Even at the end of the movie, the dude realizes he's dead because he sees his hand starting to decay, and he sees like his murder on screen or whatever, and that the woman who he ended up marrying, his wife or whatever, was the one who killed him when she was one of the creatures. So it begs the question of like, why does this guy have free will? Because the movie ends with the doctor like looking at him now that he's one of the creatures too, and he's like, oh, you want me to repair your hands for you? And the dude like raises up and looks at he's like looking at the doctor, but you know, looking at the camera, and it like he freeze frames basically and goes off. And make a really kind of sad shocker ending that they just kind of put in there to be shocking, and it kind of works. At the same time, like I said, if you overthink too much about it, it doesn't really work, because you're left with the question of like, well, how does the doctor know that this guy is going to want to be one of these things, since he has like complete free will? What if he just like walks over there, blows the doctor's head off, or bashes his skull in, and then burns the body so the doctor can't come back to life? Because if you cremate these things, they can't come back, obviously. So, or what if the dude just like leaves town and shows like the authorities that he's decaying and all that, and he's, you know, dead but alive, and then the FBI and government just swoops in and just annihilates all these creatures, or takes them back to a lab somewhere? I mean, it begs those questions of like, okay, like it's almost like they wanted a clever twist, but they knew it didn't entirely make sense. As far as this movie goes, I'll go ahead and say it. I'd give it a 3 out of 4. Despite my problems, it has a 3 out of 4. Despite my problems, it has a good atmosphere. The acting is mostly good. It has like a real tragic, depressing feeling about it that works. But this is one of those movies that I think the idea would work better as like a shorter episode of a horror anthology show like Twilight Zone or something, or Tales from the Crypt. Twilight Zone was more about like sci-fi stuff. This would work as more of like a Tales from the Crypt episode or some horror show. Because it would be going by much faster, and you wouldn't have time to really put as much thought into what you're watching. So it wouldn't be as you wouldn't be thinking as hard about it when you watched it. With the fact that it's stretched out, it demands more of your attention. So the fact that we're going back quicker, you'd be like, oh, okay, that was a great, really cool like Tales from the Crypt episode. As a full feature-length movie, it's just good. I feel this is kind of a forgotten about movie. Like it has a cult following, but as a zombie movie, it's just pretty much kind of forgotten about. And I can kind of see why, because it's so unconventional with what it does, or it's more unconventional than a traditional like horror zombie flick. But at the same time, this is a good B movie. This has ideas in it though that could be under like an even more higher caliber team working on it, like directing wise and script wise. Could rise above its B movie trappings and be even like a greater experience for the viewer and a greater like piece of work. There's just really interesting ideas here. Like, what if, like, you could do like a whole movie about like the town like being zombies and like how that makes them feel, and how they feel about being dead and just trying to pretend they're alive and all that. And just like you could even put the movie 100% from the cops' point of view or whatever, and from the creatures, like have the creatures in there as well. And like maybe at the end of the movie, maybe you could even have it to where he like chooses to become one because his wife is one too. Or he doesn't realize he's dead the whole time, or maybe he is human and he gets killed partway through the movie, and then at the end of the film he realizes he is dead and he chooses to join the group because he wants to be with his wife and everything, who is also one. You could you could really make this a much deeper movie with the material here if you wanted to, like much more dramatic. Maybe that would take away from some of like the B-movie fun of this version, but I feel like if you did it well, like dramatically, it would be really interesting. Like just to see from like a zombie's point of view, like how it feels about being dead and all that and everything. Or maybe the creatures do have free will and they're just like helping the doctor because of the fact that he's keeping them like, replenished and alive by rebuilding their bodies and everything and all that kind of shit. Like you really could do something there and have something, or maybe at the end, the guy, like the doctor is going to kill the guy who is alive, and he is dead, but he still decides not to join them, and the doctor's like going to kill the guy to put him down, and the dude's like wife like revolts and blows in place all the shit or something and kills the doctor and everybody else. Like there's ways you could like really make this work dramatically to where it would be like just way more impactful than just like a B flick. But for what the movie is, though, not what I wish it was or would rather see, this is a good movie, and I can see why it has a cult following. I like it. I would buy it. But yeah, this is one that I could see a remake being superior if done right. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you.